go
Now, you know
crazy.
what does work all the time,
What's that?
like constantly working? People's CI systems,
Oh yes, always.
always working.
Now that must get expensive to be always running, especially if you have a cloud.
Well, so it is expensive, and it's expensive in two ways. A, obviously, you're running infrastructure. You've had to
Mm-hmm.
set that infrastructure up, but also you're relying on other people's infrastructure and other people's things. And so there are some interesting carrying on effects to those other people. And often those other people are open source projects or companies that help fund those open source projects. And so what we think of, always be testing. Like every time someone commits to GitHub, do a full round of unit tests, a full set of integration tests, spin up VMs, do Docker builds,
Oh yeah.
deploy to Kubernetes, and then destroy it all. That is definitely an expense on you, but also like every single time you do something like a Docker pull or a Maven build, you're collecting information from something that is a somehow funded like piece of infrastructure for open source.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are finally getting really hit by that expense. So we saw Docker has for a few months now been talking about the cost of running Docker Hub. And the big, like one of the big expenses there is CI systems. A number of years ago, I built it was a MySQL Docker image that had a bunch of magic in it to do like auto clustering for replication.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And like just that little project I did ended up getting something like 500,000 or more pulls, right? And that's just some idiot writing something that nobody's probably ever really using for real. I hope not, at least. And that's a lot of data transfer, right? Because it was probably 400 or 500 meg by the time I had MySQL and some other stuff in there. And so that's multiply that by that many. That's a lot of bytes being downloaded that someone's paying for. Like if you're running in Amazon, which probably a lot of these folks are, one of the expenses is the data transfer, right?
Yeah.
And so like Docker Hub paid probably a substantial amount of money for me to have this like silly little project and then a bunch of people to for some reason tie it to their CI systems because there's no way like that was people, right? That was someone who thought it'd be interesting that was clearly doing some sort of build against it. And then like every time something happened, it would rebuild against it.
And then so the problem is every time you do a build or a run or whatever, like you have to pull it down, right? Or not, I shouldn't say have to, but every time
Right.
people are doing it, they're pulling it down. Now is
Right.
and like that seems like, I mean, I don't do anything technical anymore. Like that doesn't seem like a good idea.
Well, I mean, it doesn't, but it's sure as hell easier than like building a bunch of your own infrastructure. Because like running a mirror per se is not super simple, right? And so you think about you're a larger company, so you've probably got Red Hat and you've got some kind of Debian based, right? So you've got
Uh-huh.
RPMs and YUMs, you've got apt repos, then you've got you've probably got some Perl CPAN, you've probably got some NPM, you've got some Ruby gems, you've got some PyPy, you've got some whatever it is on Go. Um,
You got all
and
these
so if you do want
packages.
to, right, and if you do want to own your own availability, you should have mirrors of all of that stuff. And running each of those is not simple, and then running them all and keeping them reliable is definitely not simple.
But people
So
don't
they
people don't like cache them on first download and then only
well,
like
yeah, yes and no. So like
yeah.
Docker itself does pretty good caching, but like it's pretty common for your infrastructure not to last long, right? Because
Mm.
it's cattle,
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah,
pets.
yeah, yeah.
So your cache can get blown up pretty easily. I mean, I guess you have maybe your machines can come and go, but you keep your data persistent. Um, but also, a lot of people will um, like want their CI to simulate the real world, right? And so when, say, a production system is doing a Docker pull, it may not have that image, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, in CI, you might want to make sure that that full Docker pull works and you're getting the same exact image and not a cached version of it. So it's not that unusual for people to go out of their way to like stop the caching mechanisms. But even with the caching, you're still collecting some amount of metadata from the upstream server.
Right, right. I mean,
Because you need to make sure, is this still current? Is it still right? Have there been any checksum changes? That sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, has it been marked with vulnerabilities or has it been deleted? Like on like apt and yum repos, they'll delete vulnerable packages, right? So they're not accessible. And so then you as a mirror should also delete those, right? Or make them inaccessible.
Yeah. Yeah, that is
so
that is a problem if you're using a programming model where you want like everything as fresh as possible instead of a static build, and you're rebuilding things all the time. Which, I mean, I guess you do that because, well, why would you do that? Because like you're assuming that like the only thing that would change without you knowing is, I guess, you get better performance and patches,
right?
And instead of you manually intervening to that, you just want it to automatically happen.
Yep.
And then also, I guess, I mean, the other thing, like, you know, in the example you were given, is like maybe you just like you don't want to set up your own mirror. Right? Like you're just like, well, why would I pay for this, for storing this thing, when I can get someone else to pay for it, and then I just pay for the little bit that I use.
Yeah, and then of course there's like, it's probably not as big a case, but like if you're hosting images in Docker, you'll probably have a lot of CI and making sure those are working. And anytime you do a pull request to your own code base, you're probably pulling down older versions and testing upgrades and stuff. Yeah. So there's probably also like open source kind of eating its own tail, for want of a better analogy, where, you know, MySQL is probably hitting Docker Hub a lot. You know, Kubernetes is probably hitting Docker Hub a lot. And you could, like, I don't know, use your own like cloud instance of one of those things and have like ECR or GCR or whatever on Amazon or Google, but then you're going to be footing the data transfer bills. So why not let Docker pay for it?
Yeah.
So we've hit this point where, you know, Docker's been talking about it being a problem for a while. And, you know, now that Docker is back to being just an open source company, they decided it was costing them too much money. So they brought in rate limits, right? But as well as them, there's been some less publicized versions of a similar story. And so one of them, I'm involved in the Helm community. Helm is like a package manager for Kubernetes manifests.
Right.
And the Helm like has like the community repositories, a stable and incubator repository, right? Where a bunch of community charts live or used to live, like 1,000 of them or something like that. I can't remember the number. And Google was graciously footing the bill, right? It was all hosted on Google Cloud. They were graciously footing the bill. At some point, they got less interested in footing the bill and sort of gave Helm a timeline to, you know, I guess, figure out how to pay for it. And I never saw the number, but the folks that were given the number were like, oh my God, no one is ever going to pay for this.
Are we talking like millions or hundreds of thousands?
I would say the latter. I would have a real hard time believing it was millions, but certainly the data transfer is like insane.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was like just the metadata, not even the packages.
Yeah.
And so the Helm community has been working to find a good way to keep them try and keep them available, but also stop this problem from happening.
Yeah.
And so we've gone through this year-long process of deprecating the community repos. And it wasn't until pretty recently, so the deadline that we arbitrarily set to make sure we beat Google was the 13th of November, so just gone past. And it wasn't really until the last little while it really dawned on us that it didn't matter how many deprecations notices we were sending out to the community in the void, it's not reaching the people that are using it, or they're just doing the usual human thing of it's not a problem until it's a problem.
Right.
And so kind of at the last minute, we a few of the folks spent a bunch of time working out how we could continue to host them, but not have it cost us a fortune. And thankfully, Microsoft and/or GitHub came to the party and said that they would help us out if we hosted them on GitHub. And so a couple of folks from the community worked really hard to basically take all the current versions, get them up there, get the metadata, and then do a bunch of DNS tricks and redirections and stuff to try and make it as seamless as possible. And I think we even did a new release of the Helm client to kind of handle the redirections. Even if you were pointing at the old versions, it would either notify you to go to the new one, or it would just automatically take you to the new one.
And then,
so I think that's another example where, and this isn't it's just because I heard a lot of stuff that was Docker's just being greedy, they're just chasing money, blah, blah, blah. But this is, clearly affecting folks that are not trying to make money, right? There's no monetization for Helm, right? No one is making money for Helm. It's a community thing, partially funded by the CNCF, but mostly by the companies that are, providing contributors like, Microsoft, etc. So it's definitely an issue that's hitting open source projects. And we've seen it with NPM and stuff, right? NPM has famously tried to roll through different monetization methods. Each one, alienates a bunch of the community, gets a bunch of people mad, and doesn't really solve the problem.
Yeah. People hate it when they have to pay for stuff.
Right.
They're really, especially when it's been free before. That really, gets their grits all boiling. Yeah, it isn't. So I thought so there's not a commercial Helm thing somewhere. I thought it was that's Microsoft's big thing, right? Isn't our former teammate Bridget a product manager for Helm?
Absolutely.
So
actually, if you not want to get a good brief on Helm, she did a great talk with a few of the other folks at KubeCon last week, which I'm sure is up on the YouTube's already, sort of going through Helm and the history of Helm. And
so
where it is and why
it
is.
Microsoft has an interest in it, obviously, which
right, but they don't have a product.
Oh, sure.
No. There's no product in Helm, right? So yes, there are carry-on effects. I mean, it's really the big thing about Helm is it's that thing where if you make it easier to consume cloud resources, you will consume more cloud resources, right?
Absolutely. No, and that's
so there's
that's what makes this this kind of thing complicated, right? Is there there's two things. One, it feels like the kind of thing where I don't know what the situation is anymore, but remember when Google paid for all of Wikipedia's hosting or something? They had some arrangement which seemed nice. And then also, if it's too expensive for Google to do, boy, good luck, right?
Well, is it that it got too expensive, or Google got less interested in the truth?
No, what you were saying, they didn't want to pay for the Helm Helm hosting anymore. So it's too much for them. But I think that's
I think that's actually part of the problem of if you don't have a product based around it.
Exactly.
When you decide that, actually, we prefer, customize or some other competing thing, you kind of just drop the old thing and go running with the new thing. And that kind of leaves the open source maintainers with
right. And then that's the second thing is it's really difficult to do a business case for spending that money as a company,
right?
Because whoever owns that budget is basically like, I have 15 things I could spend this money on, and you want me to spend, I'll just make up a number for conversational purposes, you want me to spend $400,000 a year on something that does not affect my positive rating in the organization, except that people think it's nice.
Yep.
And so it is, yeah. I mean, that is a it's a weird, interesting problem, right? In the sense of like, does it like creep back into the actual like design of the systems? Like, are there people on the like Helm? I mean, obviously, you said y'all spent a lot of time trying to figure this out, right? So it becomes a big issue. When I guess what the effect is that the access across the public internet is a feature of your open source project. Right. Like it's kind of an optional feature, but not really. Right. Like, you know, like you could, what do they call it? Air gap it. You could sort of totally cut it off from the public internet, but really that would be, not an aberration. That's negative. That would be an exception to like the normal way of doing things. And then, that's the deal is like, once the public internet is part of your project, someone's gonna have to pay for something,
right?
which is not always, traditionally has not always been a thing for open source projects, right? You haven't always had to like implicitly pay for something associated with your project.
Yeah, and it definitely, it is one of those things, you do become a victim of your own success. Like one of the reasons that Helm is the most popular system of its type is because you get such a great initial user experience, right? You can do Helm install stable / and type in the name of your favorite open source tool, and it will probably install the Kubernetes and it will probably work, right? And so that mean time to dopamine is brilliant, and it's amazing. And if you look at folks that have tried to use or build other tools to do the same thing, they haven't really hit that. So I remember I did a stream with JJ when we were trying to use a logging tool, and they had decided to move away from Helm and use some other system. And we spent 2 hours trying to go through this and set it up and get all the CLI tools working and doing all this stuff. And then we were like, oh, wait, someone has a Helm chart for it. Like 6 minutes later, we had a full running version of it. Right. And so like having that meant that like, okay, we're going to clearly next time look for a Helm version of whatever it was or whatever it is we're trying to do, because we had such a great experience.
So that I think that's a good last topic I was keeping in my head to ask you.
All right.
So what are these other shows you have on Tanzu TV, Paul? What do you usually?
Boy.
So far you've really lined it up. 2 hours of trying to configure a log system.
Yeah.
So is that representative?
Yeah, that is pretty representative. So that's the show I do with JJ, which isn't yet an official Tanzu TV show. And the reason for that is it is a crossover show that I do with JJ, and he's part of IBM. And so I've been trying to think about how that works. And also he streams it on the IBM and I stream it on the Tanzu. And so there's just some weird branding things I'm still trying to figure out. But also the Tanzu TV website itself, we've got enough shows on there now. There's just this long list of things. And we're working with some folks to try and make it easy to navigate. And I decided that rather than making the problem worse by adding even more stuff, I would just wait until we figure out a better way to represent.
It's like a community show. Yeah. You know, we should rename him from NoSSH JJ to Cobalt JJ. Cobalt on Kubernetes JJ. That should be his new name.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Yeah. We can call
would love that.
Double K.
K.
You
have to be careful there. You can't put too many Ks together in a row.
Yeah, I was thinking CK. Maybe that's like Calvin Klein. You could go
Right.
Cobalt. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, capital C, lowercase k. Cobalt Kubernetes JJ. That's good. Yeah, I think he can ride off of that for a couple of years. That he got Cobalt running on that.
Yeah.
So you got that with JJ.
Yeah.
Multi now.
That's on.
Now, do you find
That's on Thursdays.
Yeah. Do you find that these multi-hour things, is that a good idea?
It can be. So we generally we don't aim to go for 2 hours, but sometimes we go for that long simply because it takes that long to get something.
Because you don't have the Helm chart. That's
right. Exactly. But we've also done some in like 45 minutes and being, wow, we got it done.
Yeah.
This was great.
Yeah.
Now, one thing, and this is maybe something that you would have some important thoughts around, is we make these videos on Twitch, we upload them to YouTube, and then it's like it never happened. And so we've started talking about, should we be doing follow-up material? Like, should we have like a blog post that sort of hits the high points and like summarizes whatever? And maybe it's more just like, you saw us fail at doing it before we did it. Here's just the how to do it bits.
Yeah.
And then should we do like either a supercut or a secondary video of here is just the how to do it and not fail at it, like 5 to 10 minute version.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's a good idea. I think about this a lot. Speaking of, like, there's two problems. One, it's a lot of work.
That is a problem.
Yeah. So that anytime something's a lot of work, that's a potential problem. Now, how do you make a lot of work pay off? Is because it has a good payoff, right? And then two, this is the other problem, is like, the other problem is it's really hard to figure out how, like, what am I trying to say?
I don't know. If I knew, you wouldn't have to say
it. It's like if you came up with one of those, like, as seen on TV inventions that you thought was really interesting and cool, and you spent a lot of time doing it, but then you're like, is anyone actually going to buy this? Right? It's kind of like, I'm going to put all this work in, and it's hard for me to know, like, is it going to be worth all of that work? So I guess what I'm saying is going back to it, the business case is difficult, right? And it seems like it would be a good idea. It's hard though, because I think the thing that you need, look at me, I'm doing this. I think the thing you need is you need to have the full resources of eyeball grabbing on the experiment. You know what I mean? To kind of be like, because if you put all this work in and no one looks at it, you need to eliminate, you have to know that you tried to get as much marketing behind it as possible, and that the verdict was that people don't like it, right? Versus if you do it on your own and you don't do a lot of promotion, then it might be for two reasons. One, people didn't like it, or two, no one saw it because they didn't know about it. And so, like, you've got to eliminate down to that one thing by just like getting a lot of promotion of the material. And then that becomes a hard part as well, because then you're back to the problem where you go to the people who are going to promote it and they're like, yeah, but is it going to be worth it? And you're like, exactly. Right. This is the issue that we have. So it's, I don't know, man. I think my other theory when I think about this is that we just have to get better at getting those little edits out. You know what I mean? Like, cause it is, I can envision I tried to do this a couple times, but then it didn't work out. Where, like, if you're doing one of these streams, you can kind of keep track of the time codes, and then you could even talk while you're doing it, because it's like, it's just a stream. And then you could extract those time codes out and be like, here's the 5 minutes, and then you can just use that as a reusable thing. And then, you would probably be a good person to do this because you can actually like program stuff, right? And so, like, if you could, I mean, you can, or you can script things.
Oh, I can script.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
So you would need a system that was like, to make it really fast, to say, all right, I want from 5:40:32 to 8:9:7, right?
Yep.
And then I want you to take that video, whatever's in there, and then slap this graphic that says this thing on it, and then put a trailer on it or a bumper, and then I want you to go to this file and take these 2 lines and upload it to YouTube, and then post it in LinkedIn and Twitter and everything else. And you could probably get that workflow down to like, I mean, that would be quick. You would but you'd have to pay attention during the actual video of when those were. And you even, I mean, you would also need it that you do a manual check. It's like a continuous delivery, right? Like, but you would need a manual check to make sure it actually worked and the video is fine. And then you would just, approve it, and then it would go out there. And then, I think the other thing that you need in the system is you need a way of the continuous video delivery, like giving you push button yes or no decisions, right? To say like, kind of like, I don't know if you look at this stuff, but whether you use Google Photos or Facebook or iPhotos, it'll be like, was this an interesting moment? And, or here's an edit that I've suggested for you.
Right.
And, because that's easy. You just push the buttons.
Right. Push the buttons.
Versus like download the video, load it in your editor, like watch it to find the good parts, like extract that out, like doing all that stuff manually takes forever.
Yeah. So I know Twitch has options. You can like set timestamps. Like if you're looking at the studio editor, there's like a button to like grab the last minute, and there's also a button to
you can highlight
save time codes.
Is it? Well, I've got it. Let me see. Maybe I can add a quick action. Whoa! Add stream marker. There you go. Paul. What have I been doing all this time? Oh, have you tried to do a loot gifting or a raid channel?
I haven't, but I've seen folks do. So when you do a raid channel, you basically send all of your viewers to another channel. So a lot of folks will do that as they're wrapping up and pick like a channel that has a similar vibe or content.
I see what we need to add in. Okay, so I've added that into our thing. We still have, I don't know why we have raid channel in here. I don't think we're ever going to use that.
I think they're just the defaults.
But now we have a clip that and an add stream marker with description.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you have that up and you're good at clicking the buttons, you could probably do most of what you want to do in Twitch.
Yeah.
And then you'd probably be able to use the Twitch API to grab those, and then maybe run the video through FFmpeg, which would let you do the cuts and adding the bumpers and stuff.
Yeah. See.
And then you'd push that to. Here's what you do: you'd push that to YouTube as an unpublished video.
Yeah.
And then you would have you setting it to publish as the gate to then do the. LinkedIn.
There you go. That's good. And then if it didn't work, you would delete it and rerun your deal.
Right. Or you would just do it manually and re-upload it.
Yeah. That's the ticket right there.
Yeah. So it's almost taking like the GitOps kind of workflow, which is all about how do we do like order of operations and gating of like things using just Git. Right?
Yeah.
Taking that and it's applying it to YouTube and using the YouTube features as the gating mechanisms to the workflow.
Yeah. See, that would be really helpful if you could put that together. But yeah, it's probably I think
that also sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah. But it's like all these things. It's a lot of upfront work and but yeah, I mean, I think that there is. This topic comes up a lot in our internal conversations around in Tanzu land, is that we have a lot of content, and there is a lot of value in, as they used to say, remixing it, right? Just going back and doing things. And I wager in your videos that you could go in and extract a lot of little things out of there that were, just like. I don't even know what the logging thing is, but there's probably like a 5 to 10 minute part where you're like, oh, look, this Helm chart exists. We ran the Helm chart. Now we have logging.
Right. Yeah. Like you could almost do like a minute lead up of, oh, we did it wrong. Oh, it didn't work again. Oh, it didn't work again. And then like the
Yeah.
5 minutes of, oh, we ran Helm and it just worked.
Yeah. I think that's
Right.
so. Okay. Well,
So there's that, but but then there would also be the alternative, which is like, well, let's just record the working bit, right, and treat them as kind of different entry points into the same content.
yeah. I don't
Because like,
know.
you think about like if we have the stream, which is pretty unedited and raw, we have like a tutorial blog post and a tutorial video, and they all sort of link to each other. Then hopefully, like whichever way you find it, you can click through to whichever way your preferred way to
Oh,
view content and learn is.
now you're
That's the
onto
kind of
something.
my thought is like I I I'm not a fan of, like, for myself, videos to do learning. I would much rather a blog post or whatever. Um,
Yeah. See, now you're onto
and
something. Is that it's like a whether it's a pyramid or whatever you call the dolls that fit into each other.
the Russian nesting dolls.
Yeah. You have basically like the raw 4 hour video is just like the draft, right? Like
Right,
not the
exactly.
draft in that, but it's just like the raw. I'm trying not to say raw material, but it's the it's like the semester long course, right? Like
Hmm.
if you were gonna experience, it's the workshop or whatever, and then there's another pass that's just like, let's just do the compressed video that's like, let's say 10 to 30 minutes, right?
Hmm.
That is just this, and then you have the even more. I don't want to use the word compressed, but you have just basically the blog post or the manual of
Right.
how to do it.
Yep.
And then those three things, or assets as they call them, that would make a complete package of stuff. And then I think with a little bit of forethought, you could plan out the topic such that it would be prima facie valuable business case wise. Like you wouldn't
Hmm.
have to debate it, right? It would just be like, these are questions that we get all the time. And so we're going to walk you through doing it. Like, for example, famously the, setting up Kubernetes from scratch, right? Like, that's what you're going to need to have for any project is just like, or I imagine with Helm, there's someone who's like, oh, hey guys, today I'm going to set up Helm from scratch. First, we're going to need to configure this. And so you got to have the setting things up. You always need that. I don't know. We got all that Kube Academy stuff where people walk through
Hmm.
stuff. Like, that would make sense. And I bet you'd get a significant amount of people who would want to just watch the stream or listen
Right.
to it because it's easy listening. All right. Well, that sounds good. And then you got Tanzu
Yeah.
Tuesdays too, but it's
Yeah.
all
We've got
on.
Tanzu Tuesdays, which is every Tuesday, but not this Tuesday, Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Um, and that's kind of a mix between like an interview show and like live coding kind of thing. So some of our guests spend most of their time live coding. Some of them is purely interviews, but most of them it's sort of somewhere between the two, where it's some sort of interview and some sort of demonstration. It's not always live coding, but like a demonstration of something. And we try to keep, despite the fact it is branded Tanzu Tuesdays, we try not to be super product focused, because we want to meet people where they are, and we don't want to have to expect them to have $3 million worth of VMware infrastructure in a data center to actually get value from what we're doing.
Just one is fine.
Right, exactly. So we have that. We have this show,
Uh
which
huh.
is all about this show. We have Code, which is we have our four sort of spring advocates, and that is Josh, Mark, Jakob, and
Mark.
no, I said Mark.
Oh, you did. Uh, um, Now I can't think of his name. Mario.
Mario. What? Why do we always forget Mario? Poor Mario.
He's
You
got.
can you can you can edit us forgetting him out of this. And so they sort of alternate between doing pretty hardcore like live coding with Spring. So they'll show up with a problem and open up I don't know what Eclipse or whatever it is we use these days, IntelliJ, and do some coding work. And it's really great to watch that, because if you've ever seen, say, Josh give a presentation or Mark give a presentation, they are like keyboard perfect, and they do it really fast and it looks amazing. And you're like, these people are gods. I will never be like them. Turns out they just practice that same thing a lot, and so it becomes really, really, fluent. If you watch them actually doing some of the streaming, they seem a lot more human, which then makes you feel a little less terrible about yourself and your own skill set.
Yeah. See, those are the kind of, I mean, in addition to all of these things, now I'm also thinking it would be interesting, like when mistakes are made, you could do like a short video, at least a pointer to like, here's a common mistake. Look, I'm doing this again. Here's a common mistake people have, and you can watch them have it and then fix it, right? Versus like if you go over to one of the Substack things, or I'm mixing Stack Overflow. I'm wrong genre of internet sites. But, you go over there and people will like explain in text why something is going wrong. But maybe watching a video of like, here's, Paul misconfigured a file and now the internet doesn't work, and then see him fix it. That I would watch that video. That would be fun.
Yeah. That would be good things to hit that time code button on as you hit something that looks like it might have been a common mistake. Just time code it. So then later on you can go back and like, what was all the things? Oh yeah. I think that's going to be a good addition if I can actually bring myself to do it properly, is using those time code buttons. And
well, I've added it into our studio. It's right there.
All right. Well, I think we all have a different studio view.
Oh yeah, maybe so, because it's per account.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, we just need to get rid of raid channel. That's not useful.
Right.
Unless we want to go raid JJ's channel, maybe we should try that.
I mean, maybe we could.
Yeah. Huh. We should think of that. All right. Well, we better wrap up so I can go.
Oh yeah, we should wrap up. I feel like we left something unanswered, but that's all right.
Well, there's also there's Nate has a show as well. I think the
oh, that's what Nate has his show between keyboard and chair, named after the old PEBCAC, right? Problem exists between keyboard and chair.
Yep.
And I quite like that, because whenever Bob mentions it, he doesn't have the PEBCAC like thing in the back of it. So he always says like between the keyboard and the chair, or he always gets it wrong somehow, and it's quite adorable.
Yeah, he talks like Starfire in Teen Titans. Then like we are there's an era with the keyboard and the chair and the kitty.
Right.
Speaking of comic books, we can bring it all the way back.
There we go.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. Well, so we got a little extra new personality here, other than me and my kids. That's good stuff. And so with that, bye. That's my really fast cutoff.
Yeah.